Hello, this is Blaine Bartlett. I'm the author of Compassionate Capitalism, and I'm also the host of a Soul of Business podcast. In my episode for the Business Growth Architect Show, what I'm going to talk about is the nature of soul in business. What's it mean to be a soulful leader? What's it mean to be an effective leader in terms of how you connect and how you actually lead your organization, as well as how you lead yourself? Part of that has to do with mindset. Part of that has to do with just the nature of taking risk. Part of it has to do with belief systems. But more than anything else, it has to do with how you intentionally create high quality relationships at work, at home, and with yourself.
Welcome to the Business Growth Architect Show. I am Beate Chelette. I am the host. I want to welcome you to our globally top 10% ranked podcast, where you will hear from industry experts about the strategies that are working right now to unlock hidden opportunities in any market so that you can grow your authority and scale your impact. And now let's get started with the show. Hello and welcome back. This is your host, Beate Chelette from the Business Growth Architect Show. And today I'm going to get to talk to Blaine Bartlett from Avatar Resources. Blaine, I am pretty freaking excited that you're here.
I like that juxtaposition of kind of constraining the excitement. It's kind of like, oh, that's interesting. That's a good grab.
The reason I'm so excited about having you is because you are almost a little bit like a paradox in the business world, how I look at it, because you talk about conscious capitalism. You talk about how do we bring the soul back into business? How do we bring excitement into systems and strategies? And how do we get leaders to not be robotic execution machines? So for somebody who's never heard about you, will you just give us an introduction of who you are and what is it that you do and who do you work with?
Okay. Boy, yeah, that's wide playing field here. My work revolves around leadership development, leadership activities in large organizations. And after the pandemic, more towards entrepreneurial, mid-sized and smaller organizations, solopreneurs, that sort of thing. My background is international business. I founded my company, Avatar Resources, in 1987, and we worked with some of the largest companies on the planet. Yeah, I personally led Nokia's Global Leadership Initiative, or a good chunk of that, for about 12 years as an external consultant to them. The idea of leadership started intriguing me way back when I was actually in high school. And then certainly into college when I started looking at economics and studying economics and marketing. And it was like, okay, why are some people more successful than others, especially when they seem to have access to the same tools, that sort of thing. And just fast forward, I started looking at it through the lens of what's the difference that makes a difference? And the difference that made the difference was the ones that were most successful, and I'm going to have to define success here in a minute here, but the ones that seemed to be most successful were the ones that found a way to connect to other people. There was a relational dynamic in play. And that idea of success, Earl Nightingale, if I go way back to the 1950s, Earl Nightingale was asked one time to define success, and he paused for a while, and then he scratched his head sort of, and he said, success is the continual pursuit of a worthy ideal. And that notion of a worthy ideal, ideals inspire, ideals touch people's hearts. Ideals aren't couched in numbers and quarterly results. Ideals change the world. And I think that's what businesses do. Ultimately, at the end of the day, the purpose of a business is to enhance the probability of thriving on the planet. And if it's done well, you're not going to have to worry about customers. People are going to want to be in the presence of your service or your product. And that's a relationship. I don't know that that necessarily answers specifically your question about my journey, but that's my framing for that for myself. And the idea of compassion came into play very strongly when I started doing some work with conscious capitalism. And this goes back, about 10 years or so ago when John Mackey and Ross Sisodia wrote the book, Conscious Capitalism. And both of them are good friends of mine. I've known them for a long time. And I said, there's a piece missing here, and it has to do with the behavior that is consistent with conscious capitalism. And that behavior has to be compassion because, it's predicated on connection, relationship. It's impossible to be compassionate unless I feel connected to all of the stakeholders that my business touches. And that dictates how the behavior actually is executed.
We just took the can and opened it. 5,000 worms just came out. So let me organize my thoughts here, because What you're saying is almost like the ideal state.
Mhm.
So the ideal state is that we have a conscious leader who is connected, empathy, compassion, all these wonderful warm words where people feel that they have a place, but the reality of it is anything but. We
Mhm.
know shareholders are driving the decisions that are being made in the organization. That the minute that an organization doesn't have to do something anymore, they don't. We see diversity, equity, inclusion programs being dismantled, women leadership, who even talks about this right now. We've had this massive backlash to the Me Too movement. We never seem to be really getting ahead. But you and I have always believed that the greatest change that can be made is from within the organization, because organizations have a lot of power, because they reach a lot of people, more so, I think, than the government.
Absolutely.
What goes wrong on a continuous basis? What is there, if you were to put your finger on
Yeah.
it, and this might be the $1 billion question for you, if you put your finger on it, what goes wrong and what needs to go right for what you are talking about to happen or not?
What goes wrong is that we have adapted and adopted a mindset. We can go way back in history to Samuel Locke. And if we look at some of these philosophers, but the idea that man is and I say man generically here, mankind is the pinnacle of creation. That is not the case in any way, shape, or form. But we act as if we are the lords of everything, and everything that we see and preview out there is ours to do something with. That mindset is toxic in the extreme. We are not the lords of the universe. We are not the lords of nature. We are not the masters. We are part of the ecosystem. We are an integral part of it, just as a plant is. I've got sword ferns outside my window here in this forest. Without these sword ferns, things don't work in the forest the way that they're supposed to work. Everything in nature serves as a center of distribution. Where we went wrong is we think that we are supposed to be centers of accumulation. And that's what a lot of businesses think. Accumulate the profit, in ever increasing profit margins. When we begin to act as centers of distribution, now this seems altruistic, but it's not altruistic at all. It is a pragmatic solution. Centers of distribution, there's a reciprocity that begins to be produced. And this is where you look at a lush jungle, and in the admonition, be careful, it's a jungle out there. Absolutely, it's a jungle out there. I would love to be in a jungle. I need to know how to
Put me in the
navigate
jungle
it.
anytime over Wall Street.
Oh, absolutely. It's lush, it's thriving, it's verdant. It's just an amazing place with so much variety and diversity. We don't need equity, inclusion, and diversity programs if we're acting as centers of distribution, and we generate thriving, because things don't thrive without diversity. They become sterile. So where we went off the path was way back then, and we've continued that process, and they got codified. Citizens United is one example of that. We can take a look at Milton Friedman back in the 50s saying that the purpose of business is to make a profit. That's bullshit. That's not the purpose of business. You need to have a profit in order to be viable. But the purpose of business is to enhance the likelihood of thriving on the planet, not just for the business, but for the planet and everything that's on it.
What we always see is that when the business only focuses on the profits, then it doesn't have people that can buy its products. And I think we're seeing a lot of this right now, is that if I make it so expensive, or my profits are going to cut, and the people don't make money, and my own people can't afford my own product, what's the point?
Exactly. Yeah. The wealth disparity in the Western world today, particularly in the U.S., is greater than it has been since the early 1800s, when the robber barons were profligate. That wealth disparity creates social upheaval. There's incredible consequences to that wealth disparity. And I'm not talking about an economic model of socialism and distribution of wealth and all that stuff. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about a consciousness that suggests I need to get mine. The whole crony capitalism model that we work off is fundamentally different than a compassionate capitalistic model, or even a conscious capitalistic model. That crony capitalism is organized around notions of scarcity. I have to get mine. I don't leave money on the table. I mean, all of these aphorisms speak to the toxicity of the ways that we actually think about business. And business, to your point, Beate, it is the most pervasive and powerful force on the planet. It has to be seen, ideally, in the pursuit of a worthy ideal. It has to be seen as a force for good. If it's a force for good, it is a pervasive force. It is a powerful force. It transcends national boundaries. It supersedes governments. I mean, you can transact. I've got offices, or had offices before the pandemic, in a number of different cities around the world. Currency was not an issue. I mean, we would, money is energy. It moves. It's called current for a reason. Currency. Yeah, it floats, it moves, and movement creates action. Action creates a certain kind of result. We want to be mindful of what kind of action are we setting in play.
Do you believe that let me rephrase it. There's a lot of focus now on mindset, more than I've ever seen it in the last 20, 30 years. And not in the secret, sitting on the couch, eating potato chips, wishing that it was kind of way. But in the sense that people are recognizing that we are connected, especially Gen Z, that are no longer willing to participate in some of the things that we have created and told them that they're good because they see the divorce rates of their parents, they see the burnout, the depression, the anxiety. They're depressed, anxious, and they want to be happy. So I think we are seeing a fundamental shift right now in the way business is done. Do you think that we are at an inflection point?
Absolutely. I do believe that we are. Yeah, I grew up in the 1960s, the Vietnam War and all of that sort of stuff. And there was an inflection point at that point in time as well. And, I look at my generation at that point in time, and my parents were pulling their hair out. My grandparents thought we were crazy, but we were looking to disrupt the existing status quo. Now, that was a political economic idea that was being put in place here, and it was catalyzed by the Vietnam War, particularly in this country. Fast forward to today, like I said, wealth disparity. We've got economic malaise. We've got health issues. We've got, the healthcare industry in this country is abysmal. It's it's not healthcare. It's sickness mitigation that is done for profit. And don't get me started on that one. But the younger generation, it can't be business as usual. Their futures are on the tipping point right now. The hottest summer in mankind's history that we're aware of. Acidification of the oceans. We've got all of these climactic things, which is just one piece that's going south. This is my grandkids' inheritance. We've got an economic malaise. This is my grandkids' inheritance. They're the ones that need to have their hair on fire right now. And they need to be poking and prodding, the upper generation, the older generation, to do something about it. I absolutely applaud them. And the folks that are in position right now, they're going, I don't understand these kids. Why do they want time? What's his life balance?
We have people that are running this country that are literally blowing up their brains with aneurysms and strokes, and they're still showing up in wheelchairs just to stay in power. So you're saying that there is an inflection point because we cannot continue like it is. Because I think about how this works with business.
Mm-hmm.
So I know as an individual business owner, I have a choice for my team. So I work with a VA team out of the Philippines. I pay them on the higher end, and I do that on purpose.
Yes.
Because even if it is comparatively not the $6 or the $4 or whatever that I probably could find someone for and train them, but that is not aligned with my value system. If you would tell our audience about the personal responsibility to be the solution in the change, what are some of the things that they can do? Because I think that there's this disconnect of what they are doing, finger pointing, how dare, but then when it comes to me, I want to save the money. I don't want to pay more than I have to.
Yeah.
I want to hold on to my money. I want to buy the new car as long as I'm okay. So what can I do, mindset or otherwise, that gets me into a better vibration of prosperity? Because that's what you talk about. It's like mindset and energy and money is all kind of connected.
It's all connected. And it is all literally energy. You talk about the mindset, and I think this is, we can think globally, but we need to act locally. And I don't mean to be trite about that. And this is where I think a lot of people get hung up, is that, and this is where the finger pointing, if only they would. Well, what about what I'm doing? And this is why I talk about being a center of distribution. To the point that you're making about, your VAs out of the Philippines, you pay them more than what they probably would be asking for. And that's actually being a center of distribution. There's basically three mindsets that are in operation, I think, on the planet. One mindset is there's not enough. And that's a contractive energy. Not enough. It's fear-based. There's just enough. And there's not a whole lot of difference between the fear associated with not enough and just enough. I'm always looking over my shoulder going, what if, what if, what if? And then the third is a recognition of a universal truth. It's an abundant universe. There's actually more than enough. And if I'm operating from a mindset of there's more than enough, I don't become fixated on where do I get mine? Mine is just going to happen. Mine is already there. It's all now. To the business point, I need to have a profit margin. There's no question about that. But it doesn't need to be enormous. It needs to be enough to justify what it is that we're setting ourselves in motion to achieve and produce. I want to pay my staff. I want to pay myself. I want to be able to live in a place that is a comfortable abode that is generative for me. All of those things, don't take those off the table. They're absolutely present, and they need to be present. What's enough? Okay, there's more than enough. I don't have to take from somebody else to satisfy some urge that I may have. If I'm acting as a center of distribution, I will look for opportunities to I give away most of my IP. I truly do. It's kind of like it's for free on my website. Now, if you want to ask me to come in and consult with you, you're probably going to pay for that. But a lot of the ideas, a lot of what I put together, it's all public domain at the end of the day. I put my label on it and I say it's mine.
I got to say this out loud, though. So right now, everybody talks about Alex Hormozi, this big internet marketer. I looked at this stuff. I've heard this, all of it. All of it. All of it. I have not heard one single new idea. What it is a packaging and a repackaging. So there's a part of me where I want to call BS. There's a part of me where I go, good for him. And then there's the other part of me where I say, if I stay in this mindset of prosperity and there's enough for everyone, does it matter who takes the message or a portion of the message and repackages it and reaches a wider audience? Because ultimately, he now serves a lot of people with a lot of these messages. Mm-hmm. So who am I to judge? I have three scenarios now that I can look at somebody who is successful. And I wanted to mention this as an example because I think that's where we get caught in our own way, where we say, that is BS, that's already existing. How dare he? There is good for him. Just bank it in, baby. And there's number three to say, well, there's enough for everybody. Good for him. He found a hook. He reformulated it. He puts it in front of more people. Now more people can hear these messages of mindset, prosperity, the energy flow around money, because these concepts are all there. So now let's say a lot of people that are listening to us today are people that I say, this is all really nice and well, but I have an issue with my cash flow. Mm-hmm. So here we are, we're talking about mindset, money's energy. I'm a good person. I have a family to feed. I've been working on this for a long time. Rent's gone up. Inflation is ridiculous. My groceries are $250 a week. It's twice as much as what I used to pay. I don't even know, how do I implement this mindset into reality to actually creating the money? Do you have any advice for us?
Start small. It doesn't, when I'm talking about a mindset of abundance, there's always something that I can look to in my life that I have an abundance of. Whether it's giving somebody a hug, smiling at somebody on the street, it doesn't have to be monetary. But these incremental, small little pieces begin to generate an energetic experience that I have enough here to give. I have enough. I have more than enough, actually. I can give that hug away. I can give that smile away. So, you start small. Also, just the nature of, whenever we're in a mindset of there's not enough or there's just enough, complaining oftentimes accompanies that mindset. Anytime somebody's complaining, essentially what they're doing is they're indicating that they feel as if they are being victimized by the world or by circumstances. Victims do not function well. I don't have to like what's going on around me, but if I can take an incremental step, if I can take just one small thing, there's this experience of agency. I can do something. There's a me here that is causing something to move. And it may not transform my experience of living in the next 2, 3, 6 months, or even the next 2, 3, or 6 years, in a significant way. But if I keep the practice, and that's the key here, I think, Beate, keep the practice, we begin to shift the direction. If I'm flying from Seattle to Tokyo, and I just did that recently, if I'm off course by a half a degree, I'm not going to end up in Tokyo. And it's only a half a degree. I'm going to end up someplace else that I wasn't expecting to end up. And this is where, intention is one thing, but what's actually in play here? This is the mindset. If it's a half degree off course, you're going to get unintended consequences. And that's something that most people don't pay attention to. And how does that happen? It happens with what we've practiced in our lives. Most people are practiced complainers. They complain incessantly about things. It's not right. It's not fair. That mind chatter, we practice that mind chatter. Start intentionally practicing a different kind of conversation, internal conversation. It is the internal conversation that moves the needle. It's not the external conversation that you hear out there. It's the internal conversation that you agree with and that gets manifested externally.
And we will be talking a little bit more about how you can change the chatter in your head right after this quick message. Are you looking for the hidden opportunities for you in this market? Or are you simply wanting to figure out what is your unique differentiation factor that makes clients want to work with you and not your competitors? If this resonates, I want to invite you to go to uncoverysession.com and schedule your 15-minute complimentary uncovery session with one of our business growth advisors that will take you through what your number one business growth blocker is, what you can do to remove it, and what your very best next step should be. And now let's get back to the show. Beate Chelette here with Blaine Bartlett, and we are talking about mindset and the chatter. So that's a big one. A victim is defined as somebody who feels that things are stacked against them almost on purpose, that there is a third party out there that is doing something that is to their detriment and they're helpless. They can do nothing about this. So let's say I've done some mindset work. I kind of know that that is the mindset of a victim, but I don't think I'm a victim. But I say things like, I'm trying, I'm hoping. What am I not getting right?
It's present in the language. Language creates reality, but it also reflects an internal state of reality. And it's the internal state of reality that gets manifested externally. So you start paying attention to your language. That is one of the easiest ways, and I say easiest in the sense that it's the most available. It's oftentimes not easy to do this, but you start listening to what comes out of your mouth. I hear myself saying, I'm always trying. Well, trying doesn't produce anything. Am I actually doing something? Those sorts of things come into play. Anytime, and another one is if only they would, and this happens in relationships a lot, if only they would, or if only it would. As soon as I've said those words, if only they would, now who has the power to make it different? They do. I don't have any power as soon as I've mentioned those words. That's the experience that I have. It's kind of like an abdication. I need to be able to take charge of my own thinking. Studies show that we have about 72 to 75,000 thoughts a day on average. Now, I mean, you talk about chatter, that is just crazy. Now, most of these thoughts don't pop into awareness. They're foam in my head, and that foam causes a lot of confusion.
I call it an old operating system that's installed that constantly runs.
It's constantly running. It is. And part of that is, who am I? Where do I belong? That's part of that, the terminal stay resident program that kind of gets locked in here. Who am I? Where do I belong? And how those questions get answered. And those are two questions that are always in play in people's minds. Who am I? Well, I'm not the kind of person who. I'm not the kind of person that would. I'm not the kind of person that, You fill in the blank. Where do I belong? Well, I belong in a hierarchy. I belong in a pecking order. Says who? Okay. It puts me in a position in my life and it puts me in a box in my life that is difficult to get out of. So I want to be able to examine on a fairly regular basis that my answers to the question, who am I and where do I belong? Where do I think I belong? And that box, I can expand that box. We're always going to live inside a box. It's a box of, it's a box of belief systems and values and culture and all that kind of stuff. It can be incredibly constraining if I'm not aware of it. What I want to be able to do is start expanding that box. I'm always going to be in one, but I can expand it. And the more I can expand it, the more of reality becomes available to me.
So this is such an important part, though. But I believe that what I know is true. And when I live, I see evidence of what I believe is true. So now you tell me that I'm limited. How do I differentiate? I always say, don't believe everything you think. But how do you step out of that confinement or that reality that you actually think what you think is real or is a reality or is true? Because I see the evidence. I think that's what people struggle with. What do you tell entrepreneurs, business owners, leaders when they insist that the evidence proves that they're right, but you can see that they're in that box?
That the word right comes into play here. Most people on this planet would rather be right than get what they say they want. And how do you define the word right? Right happens, the experience of being right is the experience of everything and everybody on the planet working in concert, working in alignment with my belief system. As soon as they start doing something that is different than what I believe should be happening, that feels wrong. Belief systems are made up. They are made up. They are not the truth in any way, shape, or form. They're just made up. And they're a consequence of experiences that I've had as I was growing up, schooling, culture, family systems. I mean, all of this stuff. And this is how things begin to work. Chris Argyris out at Harvard a long time ago did some work with systems, group systems. And he developed this thing called the ladder of inference. And I observed data. Then I start assigning meaning to the data. Then I start looking for ways that reinforce the meaning that I've made up about that data. And that gets repeated. And all of a sudden, I now have a belief system that's formed. And this is where confirmation bias comes in. I get inside this echo chamber and I start looking for things that validate my belief system. I don't look for things that invalidate it. I look for things that validate it. I mean, the whole mechanism of noticing is organized around what my belief system tells me is true. And anything that falls outside of that domain of trueness tends to get ejected real quickly. The purpose of the mind is to protect itself. That's the purpose of the mind, to protect it. It's an ego base. The ego does not like to be perturbed.
If I'm listening to this show now and I have doubt that what I have been believing in is actually true, or I don't want what I believe in, that it's difficult to find clients, that it's hard to make sales, that people are not buying right now, that I have the wrong product at the wrong time in the wrong market, that I don't have a product market fit, that it's difficult to find a relationship, that people are very complicated, I can't find any good employees. So if I'm in this mindset and I listen to you now talk and I say, well, what if I'm not true? Give us some actionable things. You said gratitude, to recognize what you have, creating abundance and things that are easy to create, give an abundance of hugs, an abundance of love, an abundance of praise. Is there anything else that we can leave our listener with, that they understand that they have to initiate the shift in order to get a different result?
Yeah. One is just a data fact. In the 1920s, during the Great Depression in the United States, there were more millionaires made in the United States at any other point in history. And it was millionaires that were made because they didn't believe in the economic reality that was in front of everybody. They said, nah, there's an opportunity here. That's a mindset. You mentioned gratitude. It's impossible for me to experience gratitude for something I don't have, that I don't experience having. So the practice of gratitude is an assumptive practice. So I assume I have the employees that I want to have, that there's an abundance of qualified employees. There's an abundance of qualified people that can work with me. And I'm grateful for the fact that they are on their way to me right now. I'm grateful for the fact that they actually exist. I work with a little meme that served me very well. It's already happened. I just haven't arrived. It's already happened. I just haven't arrived. So my job now is to arrive at that point where it's already happened. It's already there. And I'm grateful that it's already there. Now, how long will it take me? I don't know, but I'm grateful that it exists. And I experience that gratitude. Now, what happens at a vibrational frequency level, if I get metaphysical about this, is I begin to move myself in a frequency band to a different frequency. There's a phase shift. And anything that exists on that new frequency band is going to be consistent with results that are existing at that frequency band. Those employees exist on a certain frequency band in the universe. Other people have accessed it. Other people find it. It's present. You can look around and you can see that people are finding people. People are finding mates that are soul mates. Then that possibility exists. All I need to do, it's already here. I just haven't arrived. My job is to work with my frequency structure, my thinking, my emotional states, so that I can begin to land in that frequency.
I love that. Yes. In the spiritual laws, it says that it's, what's it called? The law of polarity. Thank you. It says you can only see white because there's black. And if you can envision yourself as a wealthy business person, then that already must exist for you, because otherwise you couldn't visualize that. Exactly. And when I explain it, I say, well, did you ever want to be a dentist? And then people say, I don't want to be a dentist. I said, see, that's why it's not available for you. But it is available for somebody else. So this is, I think, the hardest part, and myself included. It's hard to stay focused all the time. And I don't even want to say it's hard to stay focused, because then I make it hard to stay focused. But I find that especially when I'm tired or exhausted, and I find myself being pulled back into my old program. And then one thought volunteers 10,000 other thoughts that I really don't want to have. Last minute advice. How do I stop the unsolicited subconscious stream of BS?
My answer to that is you don't. It is going to be there. What you can do, though, is not fixate on it. It'll come through, and then just kind of go, yeah, fine, whatever. And then you go back to focusing on what it is that you want.
Give it no meaning.
This idea of utopia, Oscar Wilde, I think it said, without the striving for utopia, nothing of significance ever was materialized. And when we land on that shore of that utopia, we look out again and we see another shore. It's the continual realization of utopias, successive utopias, that makes life worth living. And I want to have a utopia as something to aspire to. Now, will I achieve it in my lifetime? That's not the point. The point is the journey. The point is the experience of, what are you doing? I'm pursuing a worthy ideal. That's what my life's about.
I love that. Well, I feel a lot more relaxed. I have quite a number of things that are happening right now, and I felt so much resistance in the last couple of weeks. And now that I've talked to you, I can already feel it. And I don't know if you, the listener, can feel this, but I do believe that there's been a shift where we open some energy to allow this to come in, because I'm like, okay, I just need to make sure that I don't judge what comes today as being detrimental to what I said I am going to do. That I have to remember that the decision that I made to go somewhere, that's the only decision I have control over. But the path, generally, that's what I heard you say, is not mine. The path is different.
The path is the path. I honest to God, I don't believe anybody cannot be on the path. We look around and we kind of go, oh my God, it's all lost. Well, no, it's not. We're on the river always dumps into the ocean. I don't care where the river starts and how many times it winds around the mountainside. It will always get to the ocean. And that's where we're at.
Okay. So, Blaine, where do we send people for somebody who says, I need Blaine to teach me more on leadership. I want to work with you, want to learn more about you. Where do we send them?
Yeah, two places. One is the simple one, blainebartlett.com. That's my kind of major or my primary website. The other one is learnbladebartlett.com, and that's where you can get into access to some of the tools and whatnot that I've got. So it's just and you can access that from the main site as well. But you can go directly to the tools if you want some stuff there.
Wonderful. Well, it's
LinkedIn
been
and all the other places. Yeah.
Yes, definitely check out Blaine, everyone. It's been an awesome interview. I've been so grateful for you that you've been here. And this is like really one of the things where I practice my gratitude, when I talk to someone like you, I feel full. I feel that I've just been uplifted, that I had an exchange, and that's something to be very grateful for. So for all of our listeners today, also think about the small things that you may not necessarily pay attention to, but the people that you have in your life, the conversations you get to have, even if this conversation may not lead to an immediate outcome, or you may not get a monetary gain, but that is something to be grateful for, because you never know where this conversation will lead and what other things are coming. So that's where I practice my gratitude. So Blaine, I'm very grateful for you. Thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure, Beate. Thank you very much for the invitation.
And that's it for us today. Thank you so much for listening or watching to the Business Growth Architect Show. And until next time, and goodbye. Thank you for listening to or watching the show. We are so excited that you're here, and we are very grateful for you. Now it's our turn to ask you for help. Please do share this episode with one other person that needs to hear what we were talking about today. If there's any question you have about business, please do reach out to us and let us know. And don't forget to schedule your complimentary uncovery session at uncoverysession.com, where one of our business growth advisors will help you to figure out what your number one business growth blocker is in only 15 minutes. And that's it for us today. Until next time.